No, so I think that, like an operational process or education, you start in preschool where you learn to interact with other children. Then you start to learn the letters. Then all of a sudden you can read. Then you finance that, and you figure out that by the time you get to seventh, eighth, ninth grade, I'm very good at math. I'm very good at history. I like to write. I don't like to write. So I think as you work through life cycles, I think you're refining what you're good at. I've never had a real job. I've always been in banking. I've had the opportunity to work in the US. I had the opportunity to move in the UK, to work even in Norway. I even done that. So for me, it's you're refining your skills, and ultimately, I'm not very good at anything really, except maybe for one thing. I am relatively okay to take a huge amount of information and then almost immediately know what is important relatively to what is going on in the world. So my skill is exactly that macro overview skill, knowing that women's magazine I read about some new behavioral science that is the reason why women buy XYZ. All of a sudden I can adapt that to longevity studies, which by the way have potential upside of 25%. So that's the really, to be brutally honest, and I know everyone is always trying to be humble, but I'm really only good at one thing, and that is taking a huge amount of information, which is, as you defined it yourself, really about being a macro guy with a big overview. So my business today is to try to put probabilities on the future, never ever trying to convince you or my clients or anyone I advise on what I think is right, but I'm always trying to say, okay, this winter, I think there is an 80% probability we have an energy crisis. Last year, the year before last, we said, you know what? Probability of green transformation becoming the major issue is large, because it came immediately after me traveling around the world this time of year, 3 weeks globally, and everywhere I touched down, there was forest fires, there was flooding, there was some nature phenomenon that dictated to me as a person, as an individual, but also as an investor, there will be ramification, there will be consequences. And I went back straight from that trip and said, you know what? In 2021, the focus is going to be green transformation. So, your willingness to be open, your willingness to be wrong, and at all time being thirsty on understanding things is really macro to me. But having said that, the breed of all classic macro guys like me, it's a very, very small group of people today, because of course we have been replaced by a text algorithm that analyzes whether data are good or bad. But fortunately, I think to some extent, I think macro is coming back. I think the next 10 years in the market for you and everyone else will be the most interesting ever, because we are at a place in history, at a place in terms of the uh, inequalities defined as a large spectrum, is the biggest ever. And there will be repercussions, there will be pushbacks, there will be new initiatives being made. And I think at the center of this sits something which is very dear to Norway, of course, sits the energy and the energy prices and that whole conversation.